It's time for some more unlearning, and today, 50% of marriages end in divorce. Or do they? Nope. First of all, it's a dumb thing to measure. Until the 1970s, divorce laws were very different, so really, it would have been a measurement of what percentage of couples are trapped in bad situations. Also, it's a dumb statistic because it doesn't take into consideration length, so the couple that held hands while the water came in on the Titanic counts exactly the same as someone who got hit by a bus on their honeymoon. Oh, but also, it doesn't take into consideration overachievers. Some people are really good at getting divorced, and if you stay married forever, you only get to count for one, but if someone gets divorced 5 times, they get to be counted 5 times. But even given all of those caveats to the statistic, no one actually bothered to measure because it would be too hard. The way you'd actually do this is you would track every single marriage that's ever happened, and you'd sort them into 3 buckets: still going, death did us part, and oopsie doodle. And the reason you can't do that is because that's too much data. A group of people put together the statistic, and you might be wondering, did they have a political agenda? Ha ha ha, of course. And what they did was the lazy math. They took the number of people who got married this year and the number of people who divorced this year, and they compared them. And those are obviously dumb numbers because those are mostly not the same people. You're basically saying that 50% of apples end in oranges. And now the craziest part? It's not even 50. If you do their bad math on their made-up numbers, you get 32%. That's the current rate. So we as a society need to split up with the 50-50 myth. Some of you didn't know that bamboo sheets are kind of a lie, so it's time for some unlearning. The thing marketed as bamboo fabric is mostly rayon. And you can see why they changed the name, because rayon is scary, like x-rays or crayon. But bamboo sounds lovely. 4 out of 5 pandas agree. It does start with bamboo, that much is true, but there's 2 reasons you should be immediately suspicious. 1, bamboo is the quintessential greenwashing word now. And 2, bamboo is a hard stick, so you know it's gonna take some work. So what you're gonna do is, you're gonna shred it, dissolve it in lye, and then mix it with carbon disulfide until you've got this forbidden honey. Then you're gonna shoot it at very high pressure through very tiny holes into sulfuric acid, which will line up the molecules into thread. Then you take that remaining toxic sludge, throw it in the river, and laugh all the way to the bank. It's not great, and as usual, the biggest risks are to the factory workers who are handling the acids and breathing the carbon disulfide fumes. But it's far from the only bad textile. Cotton uses an unconscionable amount of water, polyester is made of dinosaur goo mixed with ethylene glycol, and taking their wool makes sheep look ridiculous. At this point, it seems like buying ethical textiles might be impossible unless you're buying used clothes or wearing a barrel with suspenders like an old-timey cartoon. But the thing I hate the most is trying to trick us by calling it bamboo. It's like if the oil companies changed the name of crude oil to algae goo. Like, yeah, there's algae in it a long time ago. But with these sheets, 4 out of 5 pandas agree, this is bullshit. Let's do some unlearning, shall we? 90% of small businesses fail in the first year. No, they don't. According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, 20% of businesses fail in the first year. Is that good? I don't know. What are you gonna do with the information? If I told you you had an 80% chance of succeeding if you start a business, that sounds really good, but what if you are bad at business? To make this useful, it would have to have a lot more information. It would have to be adjusted by experience level of person starting and different business sectors, and also like, does the person have rich parents or not? You need a lot more data if you want to compare Apple stock to Apple stock. But maybe you've heard 90% of restaurants fail in the first year. That one's more plausible to me because restaurants are a terrible business idea. It's a highly skilled manufacturing job where the product has a shelf life of 10 minutes. So I'd believe that 90% of them went out of business, but it turns out super no. This study found that only 17% of new restaurants fail in the first year, which is actually lower than the all business number. I think the reason a lot of people believe this is confirmation bias. You see restaurants, you keep track of when they open and close, but like, can you tell me how many industrial design firms opened and closed in your neighborhood in the last year? We're only really watching the one that gives us num-nums. I don't think the takeaway here is that all statistics are dumb or that you can lie with statistics, even though you can. The better takeaway is if there's a stat that all of your dumb friends can recite off the top of their head, that one's wrong. 50% of marriages don't end in divorce, 90% of restaurants don't close in the first year, and you don't eat 11 spiders every year. The exception never proves the rule, right? Like, we all know that. That's not how rules or exceptions work. This is one of my favorite human tendencies, is we tend to switch sayings around to make them easier on us. The phrase, the exception proves the rule, comes from like a specific legal meaning, which is that if there is an exception, there must have been a rule. So like if you put up a sign that says no parking on Mondays, that implies you can park the other days. The exception proves that a rule exists. But people decided that arguing is just too exhausting, so what if we use that saying to mean, if I'm wrong, it somehow makes me more right? The way people say it's just a few bad apples now is like we think, oh, well, you can't fix apples. Apples are gonna apple. But that's not what the saying means. Like originally it meant a few bad apples spoil the bunch. Even one bad apple spoils all the other apples because when apples rot, they emit a chemical that causes other apples to rot at a faster rate. It's a super useful metaphor. But instead we decided as a society, we don't want to defund the apples or even ask the apples to stop shooting at us. It's just too much work. It's much easier to forget how apples work. I think eventually all sayings are going to get flipped. So when I want to sleep in, I'm going to start saying, yeah, the early bird has to eat the worm. And when I'm proud of myself, I'm going to say, wow, I've worked really hard. I hope I get to taste some of my own medicine. And you can't get mad at me because I'm just one bad apple that proves the rule. I don't like to think I'm somebody who believes a lot of stereotypes, but recently something happened that has me kind of shook. I was in Paris and it was amazing, just like knowing that I was walking the same streets that Ratatouille once walked. It's truly magical. And a lot of the people were similar to how I was told they were going to be. There was a lot of smoking, everybody was very well dressed, and there were baguettes protruding out of a shocking number of bags and baskets. But the thing that I was not expecting is that nobody was rude to me. Not a single person all week was rude in my vicinity. I'm embarrassed that I expected that and that I let the world convince me that everybody there was going to be mean, and nobody was. And it's not just that they weren't rude. They were incredibly nice. Like at one point, we looked confused in the subway, and a person who was dressed for work just spent like 5-10 minutes finding the correct platform for us and making sure we got where we were going. And then later, we were at like a pond looking at some ducks, and a guy kind of ran up to us and with his very strong accent was like, if you like these ducks, there are better ducks just around the corner. And so we went around the corner and there were incredible ducks there. One of the ducks was so cool, it was a heron. And they were just being ducks. They weren't being turned into foie or anything. They were just ducking around on the pond. And then later that guy saw us again on the trail and was like, did you see the ducks? Weren't they great? And I just feel bad for believing the lie about a whole city of people. Also, you can pee for free at the top of the Eiffel Tower. No one told me that. Let's unlearn something together. MSG is not bad for you. People are just racist. So monosodium glutamate is a salt and an amino acid, and it makes food taste tasty. It was originally synthesized from seaweed by a Japanese scientist who was looking for a way to add umami or unctuousness to food, and it works extremely well, and so it became popular in Americanized Chinese food. In the 60s, a doctor who ate too much Chinese food got a headache and speculated in print that perhaps it was the MSG, even though MSG occurs naturally in tomatoes and Parmesan cheese, and he never wrote about how he got a headache when he had too much pasta sauce. Scientists researched it and clearly showed that it had no ill effects, but it was too late. Mass hysteria took hold, and a bunch of people claimed to get mysterious magical symptoms from eating too much Chinese food, like tingles and jitteriness. I should point out that while studies consistently showed no problems from humans eating MSG, they did show that there were some problems when they injected MSG directly into the brains of rats, which proves that scientists are very weird and hate rats. I'm not going out on a limb here. This has been debunked. debunked for ages, but people are still writing Yelp reviews about how a restaurant gave them MSG jitters. And that's sad because it means we're missing out on a lot of good umami tastiness because companies have to cater to a small group of people who have little tiny rat brains that act as if they've recently been injected directly with yum powder. A lot of labels that are supposed to tell you the quality of a product seem intentionally misleading. Like my favorite one is maple syrup. It used to have grades like A and B, and then about 10 years ago, Big Syrup decided that that was too negative, and so now everybody is grade A. No matter what color you buy, you're getting sweet, sticky participation trophies. The USDA ranks beef with 3 different words: choice, prime, and select. If you didn't know what order those were supposed to come in, you wouldn't know from looking at them because they are literally synonyms. Apples are funny because there's a grade 1, which, as you would assume, is the 3rd best apple. Butter has grade B, that's also the 3rd best. Above that is grade A, and above that, grade AA. A lot of these sound like the judge was just like making up terms and they saw an apple and they were like, this is the best apple ever. And the farmer was like, that's not that good. Check out this apple. And they were like, well, of course, best apple ever is the 3rd best apple. Genuine leather is not good or bad. It doesn't mean anything. It just means is leather. And brands know that a lot of people don't know, so the worst leather is more likely to have big letters that say genuine leather. The most intentionally misleading number scale has to be the plastic number. 1, 2, and 5 are usually recyclable, and the rest super aren't. So the plastics industry decided to take the 4 numbers that mean absolutely not recyclable and put them inside the recyclable symbol. So remember, numbers 1, 2, and 5 are grade AA super prime best ever plastic, whereas the other numbers are just genuine plastic. Let's do some quick unlearning. So I have this theory that everything in the world is either slightly worse or slightly better than I was originally told, and adulthood is just about figuring out which is which. Well, this is one of the ones that is actually slightly better. Comic Sans doesn't suck. People just use it wrong. It's 1994 and Microsoft is working on something called Microsoft Bob, which is supposed to make computers more accessible to children and people who have never used them before. It's a noble pursuit. Now, it turns out they're accidentally making one of the worst tech products that's ever happened, but they didn't know that at the time. So they have these cute characters like Rover the dog that walks around on your screen and tries to help you with stuff. If you liked Clippy, this is Clippy's grandfather. And if you hate Clippy, get off my internet. Clippy was perfect. So Rover's got these little speech bubbles, and originally they just put in normal fonts like Times New Roman that come with Microsoft. But you can't have a dog talking in Times New Roman. He's not a cop, okay? So this designer named Vincent decided to create a font that would be more accessible. So he draws something based on the beautiful hand lettering of the comic books he loved, Comic Sans. And just like the people who invented motion pictures are not to blame for James Cameron's never-ending string of 4-hour-long Avatar sequels that no one asked for, it's not Vincent's fault that people took his accessible children's font for talking dogs and used it in places it doesn't belong, like defibrillators and World War II memorials. And it gets better, because what Vincent didn't know is he accidentally designed a font that was easier for people with dyslexia to read. It's a good font with good uses. It's not like, say, Papyrus, which is always bad and is only used for bad things like Avatar movies. Here's some quick unlearning. Most people don't get their day in court.
You understand what it's like for an innocent man to have to wait to have his day in court.
I've watched a lot of courtroom dramas, even though everything that happens in them is complete nonsense. Like in the real world, there are no surprise witnesses, no one ever confesses from the stands, lawyers are only average looking. But the biggest lie of courtroom dramas is the courtroom. Last year, 98% of federal cases did not go to trial. They ended in plea deals. So while TV lawyers are all about clever retorts and big shows and a lot of sexual chemistry, in the real world, they are desk jockeys who are working in the plea deal factory. And part of the reason nobody goes to trial is because it's almost impossible to win. So of those 2% of cases that actually insisted on getting their day in court, more than 80% lost. There's a bunch of reasons for this. One is that prosecutors have a massive home field advantage. Cops work closely with prosecutors become judges, so you're starting a trial from a deep hole. And knowing that, prosecutors stack more and more charges on everybody who gets brought in, because if you've got an 80% chance of being found guilty and serving a bajillion years, then you'll take the plea for 3 years even if you're innocent. So that dramatic moment where somebody stands up and they're like, I want my day in court. No, you don't. But I love realism, so I think there's room to make a TV show where somebody says, I want my day in that room where prosecutors force you to take a plea deal even if you're innocent. And that doesn't sound super watchable, but what if I told you the lawyers in that show would be hot and have a lot of sexual tension? It's time for some quick unlearning, and this one might hurt a bit. The huge island of plastic trash in the Pacific Ocean isn't real. It doesn't exist. I mean, it's kind of real, but it doesn't look like this. It looks like this. You know that thing where somebody is making a point that you agree with, but then they lie, and so it makes you both look bad? That's what's happening with the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. You've heard plenty about it on this app. It's a massive pile of trash. You could walk across it. It's twice the size of Texas. It's all your fault. The thing is, when you go to look for pictures, the pictures that you see are either close to the shore, so not the same trash, or they're like some trash. Those aren't great, but it's supposed to be twice the size of Texas, not once the size of a Lexus. And the reason for that is that the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a metaphor or a misunderstanding or a lie, depending on who you're talking to. There is a greater amount of plastic in a certain area because of the way the currents work, but it's not big plastic, it's tiny, tiny microplastic. There is a larger percentage of dissolved microplastic in the ocean in that area. Not good, but you could swim through it and not notice. It's bad and I hate it, but when you exaggerate a point that much, you accidentally end up proving the other point. When people find out, they don't believe anything anymore. It's like cannabis. There are real risks to using cannabis. For example, you might tell a story that seemed really funny at the time but is boring for the rest of us. But when you show reefer madness and it's like, this is going to make people do murders, then you lose those people. Even if you had good points to make, that gets lost because of the lie. A couple weeks ago, I mentioned that studies show melatonin doesn't actually help you fall asleep much faster, and people didn't know that, and they seemed a little bit upset. And so in the similar vein of telling you stuff that you might not have known and is going to annoy you a little bit, here's a bunch of other stuff that also doesn't seem to do anything. Vitamin C. It doesn't boost your immune system or prevent you from getting sick. It does stop you from getting scurvy, and it does help in cases of extreme exertion and extreme cold, but unless you're a pirate ski racer, you're just making expensive pee. The close door button on elevators. The Americans with Disability Act requires elevator doors to stay open long enough for someone with a physical disability to get through them. So if your elevator was manufactured after 1990, the button almost certainly doesn't do anything, but they're still fun to push. Dieting. It's just not what our bodies evolved to do. A big meta-analysis of dieting studies showed that 50% of weight is regained within 2 years and 80% within 5 years. Diets are great if you want to be miserable for 6 months, then happy with 6 months while you buy new clothes, and then miserable for another couple of years as you slowly put those old clothes back on. Any financial advice that isn't buy index funds. Basically, nothing legal outperforms the market. Professionals who pick stocks for you charge 10 times the fees and still do worse. And if you're thinking about picking your own stocks, only 1% of people who individually trade stocks show any profit at all over 5 years. Even though it seems like real estate is always going nuts, it's still a worse investment than index funds over time. And even if you inherited a bunch of money from your rich dad, you would have made more money just putting it in index funds than running a large company with your name on it. So take all the money you saved by not buying supplements and dieting books and use the energy you were going to use to press the closed door button and put all of that into index funds. Some seasonal unlearning. Every holiday origin story you learn as a child is a lie. I think most people know at this point that the Peanuts version of the Thanksgiving story is complete nonsense. Like, by the time the Mayflower arrived, members of the Wampanoag tribe already spoke English, so it wasn't like, ooh, who are these people? Would they like our corn? They were entering a tenuous military alliance because they were in the middle of a long war with the Narragansetts. Harvest festivals have been around forever, and Thanksgiving festivals have been around forever, usually to tell God you appreciate his help in doing some atrocity you've just finished. The idea of this really important friendship dinner was propagated in the 1700s because the people of New England wanted to increase tourism, and that's basically how all holidays work. They're mashups of old traditions and propaganda. Christmas comes from solstice, which was a celebration of Sol in the cult of the sun god, and Easter was a combination of a pagan fertility festival and Passover. Early Christians wanted their big holidays to work for new converts, so they mapped them over existing holidays, similar to how Android has an importer for iPhone contacts. You want to make the switch seamless for people. But my medium spicy take is this actually takes a lot of pressure off you. You can celebrate any holiday any way you want because taking the holiday and changing it to fit your needs is truly traditional. Put the Christ back in Christmas or put back in Sol, the unconquered sun god. Whatever you want. So fight the darkest day of winter by bringing trees inside and putting lights on them, or celebrate a bountiful harvest by eating a little too much of it. The important thing is that all of us gather together, take days off work, and spit in the face of a harsh earth. Some quick unlearning. Alpha male wolves aren't aggressive and dominant. They don't rule the pack. They are just normal dads. Every once in a while I get comments on here from people who have alpha in their usernames, and that tells me two things about you. Number one, if I spend any time around you, you're going to recite some podcast that you kind of remember. And two, you don't know anything about wolves. The idea that male wolves are in a constant struggle for dominance within the pack and the alpha is the one that rises to the top top because he's the most manly wolf, is based on debunked research that only watched wolves when they were in captivity. And understandably, when you throw a bunch of adult wolves into the same cage, they're going to behave differently than they are in the wild. It's like if an alien wrote a thesis on the behavior of humans, but the only thing they studied was episodes of Jersey Shore. In the wild, packs of wolves aren't just a bunch of adults fighting for dominance, they are a family unit. There's an alpha male and female, and those are just the breeding pair, and the other wolves aren't beta cucks, they're literally children. And the boys aren't fighting to impress the girls because the girls are their sisters. A true alpha male doesn't learn debate language for comment sections. They leave home at the age of 2, pass messages to each other by peeing on trees, mate for life, go to great lengths to protect and feed their families, only mate in the months of February and March, and at least occasionally dress in grandma's clothing. If you have alpha in your username, my only conclusion is that you want to be my daddy wolf and wear my grandma's clothes. The dumbest take on the internet, and it goes viral every couple of months, is that libraries would be profitable if they simply sold coffee. I know it's engagement bait, but consider me baited, because this is wrong on so many levels, it's actually kind of impressive. Number one, and most obvious, is that it's not supposed to be profitable. It's a service. That's how they work. Schools could be profitable if they were also sweatshops, and the police would be profitable if they also mowed people's lawns, although we don't want them to do that because statistically it is a much more dangerous job. Number two, and an also important point here, is that no, they wouldn't. You know who does have coffee shops? Bookstores, and they also sell the books for money instead of loaning them out for free, so $1 million times better than your business model. And you know what you never hear? Running a bookstore sure is an easy way to make a ton of money. And the third point, which I think might be the most important one, is they do sell coffee. Lots of libraries have coffee shops, so you could just ask one of them, did this turn your library into a cash machine? So I asked one of them. A friend of mine runs a library branch that just finished negotiating with a coffee shop tenant to come in and rent part of the library. And do you know how much they're getting from that coffee shop? A couple $100 a month. And if you think the difference between this library being profitable and losing money is a couple $100 a month, I recommend you check out Dewey Decimal 513.2 Basic Arithmetic. But also don't do that because the Dewey Decimal System is oddly homophobic, which is not to say that libraries shouldn't sell coffee. They should, because coffee is great and I would like to buy coffee. And also, coffee shops help turn libraries into that crucial third place that we are lacking in society. So libraries should sell coffee, elementary schools should sell coffee, and the police should sell coffee, but they should not deliver it because delivery driver is a much more dangerous job. Here's something you should unlearn. The videos you see on apps like this, the stuff the algorithm shows you, is much more in your control than people think. People act like they're just passengers in the apps. They're like, oh, it makes me too angry, it makes me too sad, I'm seeing too much political stuff today. There are some known biases in the algorithms, but the general vibe of what you see is entirely up to you. All of these apps pick videos for you based on signals you've given them, like likes and dislikes and how long you watch videos. So at some point, you taught this app that you like mid guys who talk fast. And sure, you could be completely genuine with the signals you give the app. You could also do all of those things on purpose to tell the app what you want. For example, I like bunny rabbits, and I decided the other day I would like to see a feed that was just bunny rabbits. So I created a brand new account with a baby fresh algorithm to see how long it would take to make a feed that was just rabbits. So I created my bunny pervert account, and then I lingered on and liked any video of an animal, and the closer that animal seemed to me to be to a rabbit, the longer it got. So dog, yes, cat, more, donkey, less, dog and duck together, more. And stuff that wasn't animals at all, I didn't just swipe away, I swiped away as quickly and as aggressively as I possibly could. It took me about 7 minutes to get my first rabbit video, which I watched through twice, liked, and saved. Went back to swiping, found another rabbit video, did the same thing again. Within 15 minutes, my feed is almost exclusively rabbits. I still like other things besides rabbits, so that's not the only account that I open, but if I'm feeling stressed, I'm just gonna look at the bunnies. It is my emotional support animal algorithm. Time for another episode of Mini Unlearning, a quick rundown of things that I was told as a kid that turned out not to be true. Number one, sugar does not make kids hyper. There have been good studies going back to 1995 that show there is no impact on kids' behavior when they consume a lot of sugar. What they did was give drinks to a bunch of kids, and some of them had real sugar and some of them had a fake sweetener, and they found no difference in the behavior of the kids. But what they did find was that parents whose kids had gotten the sugar drink rated their kids as much more hyper, even if the scientists lied to them about which drink they got. Scientists are devious, man. They're like pranksters for good. Number two, a dog's mouth is not cleaner than a human's mouth. It's hard to figure out what this would actually mean. Human mouths have human mouth bacteria and dogs' mouths have dog mouth bacteria. And you can't even say that that's clean or dirty because bacteria is not inherent inherently dirty. It's part of your whole body's microbiome, and it's crucial. Without it, you would die. People sometimes say something is so clean you can eat off it, and the truth is, I would not eat food out of a dog's mouth, but I would eat food out of my own mouth. Ergo, scientifically, my mouth is cleaner. Number 3, carrots don't help your vision. This isn't just a random myth, though. This is a carefully calibrated piece of propaganda that helped the good guys win World War II. The British invented radar, and all of a sudden, they knew where German pilots were before the German pilots knew where they were. But they didn't want the Germans to know that that's what was going on, because then they might try to invent radar. So they took the fact that carrots do prevent some eye diseases because they've got a bunch of vitamins in there, and they ran with it. They gave all of their pilots extra carrots and told them, we're doing this because it makes your eyesight better. I think that's so cool. It puts the British Ministry of Information right up there with scientists who lie to moms. Time for some more unlearning. Number 1, we know how bees fly. This was memorialized forever in Bee Movie.
According to all known laws of aviation, there is no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway, because bees don't care what humans think is impossible.
It is true that a French scientist in the 1930s said he couldn't figure out how bees fly, but it's also true that we invented jet engines in the 40s and space flight in the 50s, so it's safe to say humans didn't stop learning about flight in the dirty 30s. Also, what's this bee got to be so smug about? He doesn't understand the physics of how wings work either. Shut up, bees. Anyway, we know how it works now. They flap their wings really fucking fast, and honestly, it's surprising we took this long to figure that out, but we did figure it out before Bee Movie came out. Shut up, bees. Number 2, America didn't spend $1 billion on a space pen while Russians just used pencils. We did use pencils for a while, and then we stopped because it's really dangerous to use pencils in places where if the lead breaks off and gets into machinery, it blows up and kills everybody. But we did not spend any money developing a space pen. The Fisher Corporation invented the space pen on their own because they thought it would be sick, and they were right, and then the government just bought some for $3 each. Oh, and since you love the Russian space program so much, guess what? They also bought the pens. Number 3, penguin isn't business goose in Mandarin. I saw this the other day, and I thought it was so delightful that it must be made up, and of course it is. Also, you could have told that it was not true because they don't look like a business goose. If anything, they look like a swanky party goose. But importantly, according to all known laws of science, the penguin shouldn't be able to fly, and it can't. Score another one for science. Shut up, bees. It's time for some unlearning, and this is going to hurt a few millennial feelings, but you need to know the truth. Pluto is not an underdog story. You just fell for some Pluto propaganda. I still see people posting about justice for Pluto as if he's just a scrappy little guy who can't get the respect he deserves. But you only think that because you saw drawings of Pluto that look like this or this. But when you were a kid, all we had seen of it was this. All those drawings of Pluto were fanfic. You have been looking at Planet Deviant art. We had seen so little of it that for the first 50 years we thought this fuzzy blob was Pluto, but it turns out that fuzzy blob is actually Pluto and its moon Charon. That's 2 separate fuzzy blobs that we counted as one. Its discovery was originally due to a rich weirdo named Percival. He was positive that there was a massive planet bigger than Jupiter that was outside of Neptune. He was also positive that there were canals on Mars that aliens used to water their crops. Neither of those panned out, but his family money was enough that he was able to build an observatory that eventually found what it thought was Pluto, but turned out to be Pluto and Charon. As we got way better at finding fuzzy blobs in space, we discovered Eris, which is more massive of a fuzzy blob, and also Ceres, which is a much closer fuzzy blob. So if you're sad about Pluto, but not about Eris and Ceres, it's not because of what they actually are, it's because of the drawings you were shown. I think it's totally fine to ignore scientific classification when it doesn't make sense in your everyday life. Like nerds will say that tomato is technically a fruit, but you put it on salad, not on cereal. That's a vegetable. But saying that Pluto got slighted because of drawings you saw is like saying that a tomato is technically a branch of law enforcement because you saw an episode of VeggieTales where Bob wears a sheriff's star. Time for some more unlearning stuff I was told as a kid by adults that turned out not to be true at all. Number 1, your blood is never blue. I was told by a teacher that your blood is blue going to your heart and red going away from it because of oxygen. And that's not true. It can be darker red or brighter red, but it's always red. If your blood is blue, you are either very sick or a horseshoe crab. Veins look blue through some skin tones because of boring stuff about how the skin absorbs light, but it's an illusion, just like telling kids that they can be anything they want, even though they went to a school where teachers don't know stuff. Number 2, your body temperature is not supposed to be 98.6. That was always just an average, so thinking that you're sick because it's not exactly that is like thinking that you're weird and gross because you're not exactly 5'9". Whatever height you are wonderful, unless you're over 6'4", and then yeah, you're weird and gross. New studies show that the average temperature is actually decreasing, so now it's around 97.9. So the Earth is getting hotter, but we're just chilling. And number 3, if you touch a baby bird, its mom won't just reject it. It's a good policy not to touch birds, but bird parents aren't out here turning their chicks into orphans because you got some of your human stank on them. Human parents, on the other hand, will frequently reject their children if they turn out to have blue blood or be over 6'4". It's just too weird and gross. It's time for some more unlearning. This week, home field advantage. I talked about this last week on the Cooligans podcast, but I want to go go into a bit more detail here. Home field advantage exists in basically every sport, with the highest being in soccer/football at 69% nice and the lowest being in baseball at 54% not nice. It does exist, but the unlearning is about what causes it. Everybody wants it to be because we have the best fans in the world, and we root for the home team, and if they don't win, it's our fault. The problem is there have been a surprising amount of studies about this, and that doesn't seem to be the actual cause. Neither are the other main theories, like travel fatigue, stadium conditions, or scheduling. The one factor that has shown up in study after study is referees. Underneath those zebra stripes are home colors. Soccer/football has the highest home field/pitch advantage because it's one of the games where the refs can have the biggest impact. Take stoppage time, an objectively stupid part of an otherwise great game. A study of the Spanish Top Flight League found that games where the home team was down by a goal last an average of 2 minutes longer than games where they're up by 1 goal and want it to end quickly. The good news is you don't have to rely on refs' vibes to time games anymore. We have watches that can stop and restart. And it's not corruption. They just seem genuinely affected by crowds. You would think that somebody who signs up to be a universally reviled sports cop does it because they don't care what people think of them. But apparently, they very much do. A German study found that in stadiums where the crowds were a little bit further away from the game, the refereeing bias goes down. I hate that this is the takeaway because referees are technically people, but the best way to help your team, according to science, is to abuse them. It is about fans after all, but it's not rooting for the home team. It's yelling at the refs. It's time for some more unlearning, stuff I was told as a kid that turned out not to be true at all. Number 1, cracking your knuckles isn't bad for you. I'm surprised this myth is still around because it's been so thoroughly debunked by a lot of big studies, but more importantly by one very small, perfect study. Dr. Unger cracked the knuckles in his left hand twice a day, every day, for 50 years, and he never did it on his right hand. That is amazing science, so I think we should all give Dr. Unger a simultaneous, hearty cheers. Number 2, the ancient world wasn't austere and minimalist. When we see old buildings and statues, they're usually just plain white marble, but that's not how they were originally displayed. Ancient Greeks and Romans painted the crap out of their stuff. It was gaudy and weird and decidedly maximalist. We see the dead, sun-bleached version of the Parthenon, but it originally probably looked more like this, which makes neoclassical architecture so funny. If governments and banks were honoring this time period, their buildings would be explosions of color. The White House would be the purple and gold house. It would look like it was decorated by your weird aunt. Instead, they're like, check out this government building. It's designed to look like a decaying empire. Number 3, the spelling of your family name wasn't changed at Ellis Island. This is a popular family lore for a lot of people, and it just isn't true. The way Ellis Island worked is they just had lists of passengers on ships, and they would look at the lists and ask you questions. There was no paperwork where they could be changing names to make them more American. Ships sometimes did make mistakes, but mostly what happened is people changed their own names before they got on the boat or after they arrived because they wanted that name. So to our ancestors who changed their names and those that didn't, and also the ones further back who painted their statues weird, I offer you my heartiest cheers. Time for some unlearning, things I was told as a kid that turned out not to be true. Number 1, don't pee on jellyfish stings. Turns out it can actually make things worse. Physically, obviously it makes things worse emotionally. The stingers from jellyfish tentacles release a very painful toxin, but it can be deactivated by rinsing with salt water, or it can be made much more painful by rinsing with fresh water. And pee could go either way, so you're playing Russian roulette with that pea shooter. But regardless of whether or not it could work in some situations, if you need salt water for a project and you're standing by the sea, but the only place you can think of to get it is your kidneys, you deserve to be covered in pee. Number 2, Ring Around the Rosie has nothing to do with the plague. I love a dark origin story. Unfortunately, this one doesn't seem to be true. For one, there's lots of different versions of this rhyme. For example, in a lot of the rhymes, it ends with all of the kids get back up again, so it's less bubonic plague and more zombie plague, I guess. Also, the rhyme didn't really show up in English until the 1880s. I just love the idea that people were like, we need to roll out a new game. You know what kids are really into? Plagues from 500 years ago. And number 3, Romans didn't vomit in the middle of feasts so that they could eat more. This is another one that seems like it should have been obvious because throwing up sucks. There was a very real space called a vomitorium, but it wasn't an upchuck room. It was a place to exit a theater. So you didn't vomit in the room vomited you out onto the street. This myth comes from people not understanding a metaphor, which basically means that all of history about the vomitorium is like the comment section under a funny post on Facebook. And if you're the kind of person who comments on jokes that you didn't understand, you deserve to be covered in pee. The thing that happened in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947 was genuinely a government cover-up, just not that one. It had nothing to do with aliens and everything to do with horny whales. I talked about this in my Fun Fact Friday newsletter last week, but it was too good not to share here as well. Every conspiracy theory is about rich and powerful people trying to keep something a secret, and the only people who can see through it are your dumbest uncles on Facebook. But you don't need Facebook to understand this one. You need to understand how sound travels through water. How far a noise can travel has to do with temperature, pressure, and salinity. For complicated physics reasons that I definitely understand, but I'm choosing not to explain to you, there's a discrete layer deep in the ocean, and if you you make a sound in that layer, it travels way farther than usual. Humans discovered this sound channel in the 1940s, but whales discovered it way earlier. Lonely fin whales regularly hang out at that level and sing their lonely fin whale songs so that they will reach more single fin whales in their area. Humans figured out if they dropped a bunch of microphones down to that level, they could spy on enemy submarines, received messages from downed pilots, and listen in on whale tinder. But the air also has discrete layers of temperature and pressure, and that could mean that there's a sound channel up there. So scientists put a bunch of microphones on balloons, and sure enough, they were able to spy on enemy aircraft, countries testing nuclear bombs, and horny sky whales. It's cool, but sinking microphones down to the deep ocean is much easier than getting them to stay up in the sky forever. So sometimes your elaborate microphone spy balloons crash. You don't want everyone to know about your cool new air and water spying system, and so the government lied. Personally, I think that story is more interesting and more likely than aliens building an interstellar spaceship and then somehow running out of gas over New Mexico. And if you agree, you should sign up for my newsletter. And if you disagree, I'm sure your uncle will let you subscribe to their Facebook posts. Time for some more unlearning. Nobody has a green thumb. People either learned how to take care of plants or didn't learn, and if you didn't learn, it's much easier than you thought. There are only two things you need to know to get really good at taking care of houseplants. Number one, don't water so often. A caring plant parent only has one button: add water. Is my plant happy? Add water. Sad? Add water. Is it dying? Add more water. But water is not what it needs most of the time. Humans can survive for about 3 days without water, but you can only survive for 3 minutes underwater. Stop drowning your plants. You're doing it out of love, but you're of mice and menning your plants. All you need to do is touch the dirt in your plant, and if it's super dry, great, add some water. If it's not, then super don't. And number two is more important. It almost makes number one irrelevant. When your plant dies, buy a different plant. Plants die all the time, and it makes sense. They were supposed to be in the jungle. We put them in a studio apartment. So what you do is buy 2 plants, and when one of them dies, replace it. Try to get a different plant. You'll keep going back and forth with one of them dying until you've figured out the one plant that can handle you and your particular form of torture. Think of your plant as an experiment in unnatural selection. You are Darwining plants that can survive in your home. And I know you feel bad that you killed it, but it does not have a soul. It is just cool-looking salad. Chill out. If you calmly replace your plants when they die and you finger your dirt, you won't have a green thumb because green thumbs aren't real. You'll have what you actually need to keep plants alive: a black heart and a brown finger. It's time for some more unlearning. Body language is not actually a language. People who claim that they can interpret it range from your grandma telling you to sit up straight out of respect to high-paid consultants on TV shows reading politicians' micro-movements, but neither are scientific. And you already knew this because every body language guide is the dumbest thing you've ever seen. The steeple isn't a positive hand gesture, it makes you look like a cartoon villain. People love to tell you that crossing your arms is a closed-off negative stance, but it's not. My hands are heavy, and I built a little hammock for them. I'm actually way more open now that I've taken care of that heavy hand situation. The only thing I'm closing off is the chance that if it gets cold, you can see my nips. I guess fidgeting could mean that you're bored or you're avoiding giving an answer, but it could also mean you just had an espresso. And can you imagine if there was an other language where the same word meant I hate you and I just had coffee, and the best experts in the world couldn't tell the difference? Shaking your head no. Okay, yeah, I'll give you that. That is pretty negative body language. Great insight. Hands on hips is a sign of aggressiveness and control. No, we're just back to needing some place to put my hands. All it is I have weighty sausage fingers. Or a sign that I'm a little teapot. What are you talking about? My favorite thing I've ever seen is that this guide says that positive words and phrases are signs of openness. Yeah, definitely, but that's not body language. That's normal mouth language. Experts watching presidential speeches on mute are not reading body language. They are doing, at best, arm astrology. There is no science behind it, but if you disagree, I'm open to hearing about it. Let's do some more unlearning. Here are 3 more things that don't work. Number 1, blue blocker glasses. Stopping blue light from getting to your eyes does not reduce screen fatigue, it's just a way for you to buy more glasses. They were studied pretty thoroughly and don't show any improvements on eye strain or headaches. And that makes sense because the thing that causes eye strain is that you don't blink enough when you look at screens, and the thing that causes headaches is because inside that screen is your work email and nightmares. I can't fix the other stuff, but I can help with the blinking. Take a second right now, blink 3 times. You're welcome. Number 2, beef tallow. Probably the funniest health claim of the last 20 years is that switching the French fry grease at Steak and Shake from crushed seeds to boiled cow fat makes them a health food. We know that the seed oil panic is not true, but also we can trace its origins to one specific idiot, and we can learn about his other thoughts. He also believes that using toilet paper reduces your manliness. So anytime you hear about beef tallow, remember that the guy who told you it was better also has an itchy beehole right now. And I can't help with that problem, but I can help with this. Blink 3 times times right now. You're welcome. And number 3, adaptogens. I've been seeing a lot more drinks recently with really lovely packaging and wild medical claims. These are all regulated as supplements, which means you can claim basically anything you want about them without any scientific testing, and also there's no way to know if they're putting the amount in there that they say they are. The most common claim is the impressively vague improves your mood. It probably does, and maybe that's because of the brain-boosting immortality herb, or maybe it's because you sat down and had a lovely soda and forgot about the nightmares. And if that's not enough, what always improves my mood is French fries. Go get them. They're health food now. And also, while you're at it, take a second, blink 3 times. It's time for some more unlearning. 3 things that people believe even though they've been thoroughly debunked. Number 1, Einstein didn't fail math. I think people like this myth because they want to be like, I'm not dumb, I'm a 1,000-year prodigy who just hasn't bloomed yet. But unfortunately, Albie was a math prodigy. At 13, he was teaching calculus. He did fail his first college entrance exam, but he aced the math part. He failed at language, zoology, and combing his hair probably. Oh, and he was only 16, so he just went away, learned a few words and animals, and came back and still got into college early. It's just not happening for you, I'm sorry. Also, the only pictures we ever see of him are him late in life with his carefully curated, disheveled genius look. So here is a picture of him as a young and dapper child. And here he is looking kind of handsome with his wife. I just think these are nice. Number 2, shaving does not make hair grow back thicker. This doesn't hold up to even the most basic scrutiny. If that was true, if you kept shaving, eventually you would just be one giant hair. Shaving cannot change your hair's thickness, color, or rate of growth, but what it can do is give it a slightly more defined edge so it might feel a little different, and also a long stick is more floppy than a short stick, so it's going to feel a little bit more firm. What I'm saying is thickness is an illusion, a sentence I've said a lot in my life. Number 3, people didn't used to live to just 30. Life expectancy is based on averages, which is a dumb way to do things because back in the day, the infant mortality rate was way higher than it is now. So if half of the people live into their 70s and half of them don't make it into their 1s, then you're going to end up with a life expectancy around 30. So 100 years ago, if you didn't get cut down like a thick follicle, you had a good chance of living long enough to realize you were never going to be a genius. I'm so sorry.